In this video, I'm going to explain some properties of amino acids that even someone without a science background will be able to understand. And at the end, I'll let you come to your own decision on whether the evidence agrees with or disproves evolution. If you're new to the channel, my name is Keith. I'm a biology tutor who teaches 16-year-olds for a living. My goal with this channel is to answer the hard questions about God in simple ways that even teenagers can understand. So if you do not believe in a supernatural creator God who created life, you have no choice but to believe in the alternative, that life came about by purely natural and random processes, meaning the Earth was originally full of chemicals, which randomly collided, forming larger molecules. And eventually, by sheer luck, they would form molecules that then make up living things. This theory is called the primordial soup theory, where random chemicals somehow form the very first primitive cells. Now, one of these molecules essential for life are proteins, which are made from amino acids. So think about it like building this Lego Star Wars ship. In order to build the final product, you need many small bricks. And proteins are also made of many small units, which are amino acids. So think of amino acids as Lego blocks and the final product as proteins. Now, the reason I'm zooming into proteins is because they are so important to every single living thing. Even from a single cell to a whole human being, proteins are used everywhere. For example, hemoglobin is a protein that helps us carry oxygen in our blood. When we eat food, we need to digest it to be able to absorb those nutrients into our bodies, and we use enzymes to digest the food. Enzymes are also made of proteins. When you are sick, you need to produce antibodies to fight off the infection. And guess what? Antibodies are also made of proteins. Muscle fibers are also made of protein. That's why when people want to build muscle, they tend to eat foods higher in protein or drink protein shakes. Okay, now let's try to understand the building blocks of proteins, which are amino acids. There are actually 20 different types of amino acids. Imagine you have a Lego box which has 20 different Lego brick types. And so proteins can be any combination of these 20 different amino acids. However, an important thing to note is that the same amino acid can have a left-handed or a right-handed version. So take a look at these two Lego blocks. Notice the same L-shaped Lego block, same size, same shape. However, they are mirror images of each other. So a good way to think about this is look at your left and right hands. They are very similar. Usually same size, same shape, same number of fingers. Fingers look the same, but you cannot overlap them perfectly. They are mirror images of each other. And just like that, amino acids also have mirror images, although they are called the same name. For example, I recently bought a supplement that has an amino acid called L-theanine, whereas there's also the right-handed type which is called D-theanine. Now here's the catch. In living things, you can only use the left-handed version of amino acids. The right-handed versions are not recognized by living things and are not used by living things. Now, if you try to mix and match both types, you will end up breaking the chain. Here's an analogy. Imagine a spiral staircase, and all the steps twist in the same direction. Now, if you try to put in the opposite twisting step, you will mess up the shape of the whole staircase. And that's why, after a chain of amino acids has been formed, it will fold into the final product, the protein. And even one right-handed amino acid in that chain will mess up its final shape when it folds, and therefore render it useless. See, living cells know this, and they will stop producing that chain of amino acids if ever a right-handed amino acid is accidentally added. Now let's talk about the famous Miller-Urey experiment. So remember how if you don't believe there was a creator God, you have to believe the alternative, that molecules could form living things by themselves. And so the Miller-Urey experiment was aimed to show that this was possible, and therefore we don't need God to explain how life exists. Their job was to try to simulate early Earth conditions and see whether any basic molecules such as amino acids could form. If so, it would so-called prove that this theory of evolution is feasible, or at least this first step of the theory is feasible. And here were the results. So I'm going to link a video in the description of the Miller-Urey experiment so you can check that out more for yourself. So in the experiment, they put gases that they thought the early Earth atmosphere would have. They put water, heat to simulate high temperature, and sparks to simulate lightning. And after some time, they found amino acids in there. And they were very happy because this so-called proved that their theory where amino acids could form by random molecules colliding was feasible. And it definitely fit in their narrative of how molecules can turn into man. So they even labeled this with a approval stamp science and showed that this is scientific, this is observable and testable. And therefore, they put it in many textbooks and they teach it as fact today. Now let's look at the problem with this primordial soup theory as well as with the Miller-Urey experiment. Problem number one is that they only found simple amino acids, not the other more complex amino acids that are also needed for life. Imagine if you had a box of Lego full of only 3 very basic brick shapes. You cannot form the final Star Wars ship. you need many other types of more complex Lego bricks. And problem number 2 is the main problem that I want to address today. I want to give credit that I first heard it from this video explained by Dr. Jonathan Safati on how chemistry disproves evolution. You can check it out, I'll link in the description. It's from Creation Ministries International, their YouTube channel. I highly recommend subscribing to them. So even if we get amino acids forming randomly in the early Earth, they would occur in a 1:1 ratio. Because there's a 50% chance that the atoms will arrange in each type, in the left-handed variant or the right-handed configuration. And indeed, they found this in the Miller-Urey experiment, that all the amino acids produced were in a 1:1 ratio, left-handed and right-handed. Now, according to the primordial soup theory, these left-handed amino acids will have to start stacking on each other to form a chain, which eventually will build a protein. However, the chance that a chain would form purely of left-handed is very low, because 1 in every 2 amino acids that approach it to stack up would be the wrong one. It's the right-handed type. And even one of them added to the chain will cause the whole protein to misfold and become useless. So let's calculate what are the odds of us having a very lucky series of just left-handed type in the primordial soup world. And the best part is you don't even need complicated math or algebra, just secondary school math that you can do at home. So let's start to do some proper science instead of just accepting what the mainstream scientists tell us to believe. So I asked ChatGPT, how long is the average protein in a simple bacteria cell? Now, why am I asking for a simple bacteria cell? Because the very first primitive cells that supposedly formed according to evolutionists would likely have simpler and shorter proteins as well. So the answer is around 300 to 400 amino acids long, and let's give an average of just 350. So now let's calculate the probability of having 350 left-handed amino acids stacked in one chain. And to do that, we just use a simple probability diagram like this. So the first one, let's say we start with the left-handed, then the next one, there's a 50% chance that the next one is a left-handed one. Then for the third one to also be left-handed, we have to take 50% times 50%, so that's 25% now. And with every subsequent amino acid, we have to halve the chance again. So this keeps going on until we have finally 350 in our chain. And so the final percentage that we will get even one of these 350 long amino acid chains that are all left-handed variants is this number, which is basically 0. But evolutionists will definitely counter-argue that, hey, with enough time, anything can happen. So let's calculate the probability of us just getting one of such successful proteins that are only left-handed amino acids. So I asked ChatGPT, according to evolutionists, how long do they say that the primordial soup had to form the first basic living things? And the answer is 100 to 300 million years. And if you notice, they have a so-called deadline on this because they need many more billions of years for these simple cells to then turn into complex humans. So let's give them the benefit of the doubt and go with 300 million years to give them more time for this possibility to happen. So I then asked, in 300 million years, how many seconds is that? Okay, and it's 9.46 times 10 to the power 15 seconds, which is a lot of seconds. Now let's go back to what's the chance that we calculated earlier of a left-handed amino acid chain 350 long, and the answer is this one in a very long number, which is basically 0 chance. But let's see, is there enough time to keep trying out these combinations if we could try out 1 per second in the 300 million years? So imagine that you are there, and for 300 million years, every single second, you are trying a new combination of left and right-handed mixture. And you're hoping for that one lucky time where you will get all 350 being left-handed amino acids only. And so here's the conclusion from ChatGPT. Even if we do that for every second in 300 million years, you only would get 10 to the power 16 attempts, which is far fewer than needed to get even one success, which is 10 to the power of 105 attempts. So ChatGPT says, final verdict, there are nearly enough seconds in 300 million years for even one such left-handed only chain to form by chance. Now, you might be wondering, then how in the world do we have those in our bodies? And the reason is because we have enzymes, we have specific machinery in the cell, components that only choose left-handed ones and only attach left-handed amino acids to our protein chains. And that is how our proteins are all left-handed amino acids. But without the complex machinery of a cell already being present, this is the chance of us having it formed by random processes alone. So this supports the argument that pure chance without guidance is statistically implausible to explain even just one protein being formed. And this doesn't even include the extremely low chance that the sequence we get is actually functional, or is it just gibberish? It also doesn't account for the extremely low chance of how we can form replication machines, such as DNA to store the information for the protein, and then a whole host of other enzymes to be able to read the DNA and then make these proteins. So in other words, evolutionists have a lot of faith. They have a huge belief in something that is statistically improbable. Okay, now I want to go back to the Miller-Urey experiment again. They call this science, and they put the stamp of approval that, well, we can observe it, so it must prove that evolution is real. But real science is about testing our assumptions instead of just shoehorning your lab results into your presupposed story and into your bias to fit your worldview. And remember that the worldview of these scientists is to try to explain away the need for a creator god. So in conclusion, here's my view. It is more probable that there was a creator, and I simply don't have enough faith to be an atheist. So please tell me how this video has benefited you in the comments. The best comment winner from our last video is Lemolab, who asked this question in response to my evolution is false video. If you haven't watched that, you can check it out. It will pop up on the screen here. So Lemolab says, if none of these arguments were good enough to convince experts in the field, why should I accept them? Specifically knowing the political background of irreducible complexity and how Behe under oath confirmed it was not science. So my response is that there are PhD scientists on both sides of the evolution debate. A simple YouTube search will reveal that many such scientists actually converted to Christianity after realizing that the evidence fits creation rather than evolution. And PS, these experts in the field have a bias to reject anything that points to a creator, since they believe in the religion of atheism, also known as naturalism. Now, I will admit that I do not understand the political background or history that you're referring to, but I know that irreducible complexity is a matter of realistic fact. It is not merely a political idea. And so in conclusion, my answer to you and to all the other viewers is don't accept what scientists say blindly, and don't accept what people or politicians say blindly. Instead, examine the evidence yourself critically and come to your own conclusions based on which is more probable. Now, remember how there are 20 different amino acids? So not every possible combination of amino acids will give you a functional useful protein. In fact, a lot of them are useless, even if you got all of them to be the left-handed type. So click here to watch the next video on what is the probability of getting an actually functional protein and what that says about whether there is a creator.